Good morning. We are going to talk today about how to identify professional doulas. So I want you to pull this out of your handouts that you received. And I'm going to go over this as a doula. You want to make sure that you are checking all the boxes and that you are meeting the mark on what makes a professional doula and what makes a doula not so professional. You also, as an educator, if you're an educator, you would want to make sure that your students are hearing about all the things that are going to benefit them in their labor, and definitely hiring a doula or having a doula by their side is one of them. So you want to make sure that they know about doulas. No pregnant woman should get through their pregnancy without at least hearing about and understanding exactly what a doula is and how they will benefit their birth and their labor. So let's go ahead and move into this. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm looking at as well. And here we are. So let's just quick run through the summary. There's stories out there of good, bad, worse doulas that, other midwives, educators, doulas, OBs, anyone in the birthing industry, they're going to have heard about good doulas, bad doulas, so-so doulas. Through experience and through the years, you're going to also probably hear about legends of doulas that, good, bad, or terrible stories. And I want you to keep in mind that you potentially could be the subject of one of those stories. And so you want to make sure that you are not a legend of a bad doula, right? So we're going to go over some of these things that explain best practices versus what makes a doula unprofessional, so that no matter what scenario you find yourself in, if you are educating a family about doulas and doula care, when they ask you what makes a good doula, you're going to be able to tell them. All right. So, and I'm going to tell you some little stories here and there as we go through of why, maybe to illustrate a point. Okay, so why one thing would be a best practice or would make you look unprofessional. So the medical team, let's go through the top row here. The medical team likes and is grateful for this doula's presence. That would be a best practice, right? And how do you, we're going to get into more of why they might like you and be grateful that you're there. But the main point is your scope of practice and you stick to it. And you're very helpful. Your demeanor is positive. You're bringing positivity to the birth. You're bringing love and support and nurturance to the environment of this labor. And that doesn't just spill onto the family you're caring for, but it also spills over into, the experience of the other caregivers, nurses, residents, midwives, OBs, whoever happens to be in there. When a medical team dreads a doula when they see them walk in, that you don't want to be that one, right? And I think by now most OBs and midwives hopefully have had experiences with both good and bad doulas. And I'm going to use those terms very loosely, good and bad. No, nobody's all good, nobody's all bad, right? But we're going to use these terms kind of loosely. So I'm just going to say good or bad, all right, just to make it simple. I know of a doula who, every hospital that I've worked in, the staff dreads when they see this one particular doula. She has got a history. She's got a reputation for involving herself in medical decisions, for interjecting her opinion in things. She's even, I've had people at one particular hospital that I was also an educator at, they were telling me that she would routinely take women's oxygen masks off and turn off the oxygen, and or move the patient when they had just moved her into a position that the baby's heart tones were looking good and the baby seemed to like, and then the doula moved her out of that position again back into a bad position that the baby wasn't liking and the baby was having decelerations. These kind of things are dangerous, right? They're interfering in the actual medical care and the safety of the birth. no matter what the ideal is, right? We should never, as a doula, doulas should never be interjecting or interfering in the medical care. Mom has the power to make changes like that, but the doula does not. Okay, empowers the family to make decisions. So along those lines, a best practice would be that the doula is empowering the family to make decisions for themselves. She's educating them ahead of time, preparing with them, educating them in a way that is helping them to know all their options so that when they're in the moment, they can make a decision for themselves and they don't turn to the doula and rely on the doula to make those decisions for them. As a doula, sometimes families will turn to the doula and ask for her advice in the moment. A good doula would turn it back on the family and say, what would you like to do? This is a decision for you. Here's your options. What do you feel the most comfortable with? Not speaking for the family, right? Never, ever, ever speaking for the family. An unprofessional doula would advise the family on what to do, right? Rather than empower them on making that decision for themselves, the unprofessional doula would give them the answer, right? Would advise them on what to do or advocate for the family. Now, we hear this term advocate a lot when we're talking about doulas, and I want to make a differentiation. There's a time for advocacy. When a mom's not getting what she needs, there are proper channels and there are proper methods to providing advocacy for a family in a birthing situation. Sometimes, though, doulas believe that their job of advocacy, it's like speaking for the family. It's like representing the family. It's like, you're still taking the power away from that family and standing in their power instead. And that's not right. So when you hear doulas say that I advocate for the family, that really, to me, when I hear them say that, that to me says they're planning on speaking for the family. And that's not what doulas do. That's not what doulas should be doing, right? We're supposed to be empowering mom to use her own voice. And if we're not empowering her to use her own voice, then we're just as bad as the people that are, we're there to do that, right? Because she feels disempowered. So if we're not doing that for her as a doula, then we're not doing our job. Okay, a best practice would be that she, the doula stays engaged regardless of difficulties. So let's say the family has an induction. It's not what she wanted. She's found herself being induced and she's going to get an epidural. There are lots of skills that you can get when you are a well-trained doula. There's lots of skills that will help you to be a much better caregiver, even and especially when difficulties arise. The problem is when a caregiver, when a doula does not have the skills necessary, when they've not been fully trained, or when they've been trained by an organization that doesn't give them adequate training, they feel inept, they feel inadequate, they feel unprepared or unable to help that family through whatever the difficulty is. And I've seen it. I've been told about it by nurses and doctors that mom gets an epidural and the nurse just sits and plays on her phone for the entire rest of the labor, just lets mom lay there and they just distract themselves. They're knitting, they're playing crossword puzzles. They're talking on the phone, they're whatever, they're watching a movie on their phone, or physically leaves completely. A very, very close friend of mine, we met because a long time ago she hired me for her second baby, and it was because her first baby, when she got an epidural with the first baby, she never got an epidural again after that. With second baby and forward, she didn't have an epidural, but with her first baby, she got an epidural, and her doula said to her, well, you don't need me now. And so she walked out, left her to birth the rest of the journey on her own. So how do you find out if a doula is going to behave this way, right? So let's quickly go back up a little bit and say, Medical team likes and is grateful for your presence. Listen to how the doula is describing her experiences at hospitals. Listen to how she describes her interaction with different caregivers. Is it positive? Is it very negative? When a person is putting down other people, it really says something about them, right? It doesn't say as much about the people they're putting down. It more says something about them. So always staying, on the positive side. And if you're interviewing a doula and she has nothing but negative things to say, that might not be the right person for you to hire. They might be a little more unprofessional, because it is unprofessional to do that. You could talk to them about how they work with you in a difficult situation. Okay, let's say I come up to a difficult situation and I need to make a decision and I'm not sure what to do. How would we navigate that together? And then listen to her answer and see if she intends to speak for you, or if she wants to advise you in the moment, or if she or he says, that they're going to educate you ahead of time and get you really well prepared. And just see how that feels for you. Okay. Another best practice is the doula keeps the room clean, fetches the needs for the family, like goes and gets more ice water, runs and grabs dad a coffee, or whatever it is that is needed by the family. A not so good doula, an unprofessional doula, would treat the nurse like a butler. They'd be pushing the button and asking the nurse to go get more pillows, and asking the nurse to go get more ice water, and asking the nurse to go get this or that, even for herself. I was with a mom who was telling me, I was with a mom postpartum who was telling me about her doula, that her doula just acted like she was this entitled, special honorary person in the room, and that she was asking, like she was buzzing the button, asking the nurse to bring her hot water so she could make tea, and stuff like that. Asked the nurse to bring her a blanket because she was cold. So that's not cool. So when you are talking with the doula and hiring, looking to hire a doula, you want to ask them about things like, in the hospital where I'm planning on delivering, do you know where to get the ice? What if I wanted to get more ice water, would you be able to get that for me? If I needed additional blankets or pillows, do you know how to get those for me? And sometimes those are under lock and key. I mean, pillows are a hot commodity in hospitals, let's be honest. But being able to go and help the nurse, or offering to the nurse, I'll run and grab that if you just tell me where they are. That sort of thing is so much more helpful. And that's the right kind of attitude, right? Rather than an attitude where the doula says, oh, well, the nurse will get that for you, and the nurse will do this for you, and the nurse will do that for you. You want a doula who is going to take some initiative, right? And not treat the nurse like a butler. The next thing on the best practices list, they charge the market rate. And there's lots of prep work involved. 2 or more prenatals, at least. You can't very well prepare a family for birth and be a good advocate, be a good support person for them if you don't know them. If you don't know what their comfort measures would be, or what bothers them, or what they like, or if you don't spend time with someone, you are not going to be a good friend to them, right? You're not going to be a very good support person to them. So if they're charging market rate, they should be providing you with at least 2 prenatals, the birth, and then a postpartum visit, a postnatal visit to wrap up how the birth went, right? But there are doulas who will charge market rate. So when I say market rate, I'm saying, let's say the usual rate that doulas receive for their services is $1,000, right, in your area. Let's say that that's what it is. And they charge $1,000, but they just want to be on call for the birth. They just, they'll meet you to get the check, and then they're going to be on call for the birth. And then that's it. That's not cool. There are agencies out there that's how they work it, that you pay and then you get whatever doula's on call. That's not cool. That's not being a doula. You can't, if it's a person you've never met before, what makes you any different than that nurse or that OB that's on call? That's not good care. That's not the definition of doula, right? So you want to find out, how does the doula charge and what are the packages that she's offering? Like, what kind of things is she going to give me for this price? And so best practices would be charges, package rates. So you would be able to see, this is what I am receiving for this price. An unprofessional doula is going to charge you by the hour, has time limits. I can't even tell you, there are other organizations out there that promote this and encourage this. We strongly stand against it with Maternity Wise, but there are doulas out there, when you're shopping for a doula, who will have in their contract a 12-hour limit, and then you pay by the hour after 12 hours. Or, you know, kind of an a la carte thing, like, well, you can have a prenatal, you don't have to have a prenatal, it'll be at your birth and maybe a postnatal, but it's all, you know, it's this price for adding each thing on. And that's kind of okay. I mean, above and beyond whatever your base package is, but your base package should, you know, a doula's base package should include prenatal visits and a postnatal. And never, ever, ever should they charge by the hour or have time limits. That is so totally unfair to the birthing person, because there's no way that they can possibly know how long it's going to take them to give birth. So that's a big no-no. All right, legal business registration and uses contracts. So you want to make sure that this person is legit, right? They need to have legal business registration. If they are just themselves and they go by their name, that's not necessarily indicative that they don't have a legal business registration. Maybe they're doing it as a sole proprietorship, but you need to ask, right? Because there needs to be some sort of legal, for tax purposes, etc., some sort of legal way for you to know that this is a business, right? And they should be using contracts. And I would go so far, I'm not going to detail out exactly what their contract should say, but I am going to go so far as to say that a doula's contract should include some kind of refund policy and some kind of grievance or accountability option. So like, it should state who they're certified by. It should state under what circumstances they would give a refund and how much that refund would be. And that way you have some way to hold them accountable if things go wrong, right? No legal business registration, no contracts. Yeah, I wouldn't exchange money with someone without a contract stating that they agree to be there and under certain circumstances, you know, meaning when I summon you, when I'm, you know, once I'm at the hospital, whatever it is, whatever those circumstances are, that's up to the doula and the client, but there needs to be some kind of, it needs to be laid out clearly so that, you know, I'm going to give them money, this is what I'm getting in return, right? And it needs to be contractual. And if you look at their contract and you're thinking, this doesn't look very professional, oftentimes you can run something like that by a contract lawyer for less than $100. And I know that sounds a little crazy to be asking a lawyer about a contract, but if you're going to spend $1,000 with somebody, it might be worth it to do a free consultation or something else, just to make sure that you've covered your bases and you're not getting scammed, right? Next would be accepts multiple forms of payment. Best practices would be accepting all kinds of payment, cash, checks, credit cards, Venmo, Cash App, whatever, PayPal, whatever, right? Whatever. A person who is only accepting cash, to me, that's sketch. To me, that's, they may not be filing taxes on the money that they're earning. So it's important for them to be on the up and up, because you don't want to be in any form linked with someone who doesn't have integrity in that way. So cash only, not cool. However, I have worked with families who wanted to pay me in cash, and that's fine, but I provide them with a receipt. So that would be my other thing. Accepts multiple forms of payments. You have some kind of record of how you've paid them, right? But also, if it's not in some kind of documentable form, if it's by cash, that they are providing you with a receipt, right? And right then and there, a receipt. Okay. Certified by a recognizable and reputable organization. That's tough because a lot of parents don't know who are reputable organizations. And so you, as an educator or as a doula or as whatever, in whatever form that you might be referring people to doulas, you may want to look into organizations that list doulas who are certified. You may want to look into the organizations themselves to see who is a good certification body that has, has high standards. I'll be honest, there's a lot of programs out there that sell doula training, and it could be like $300, you read a book and they're going to give you a certificate, and it's just not, it's actually not really a vocational credentialing, right? So what organizations actually offer some sort of credentialing where you can put letters after your name, where you can fall back on the organization for grievance policy information, that sort of thing. So finding out who has the high standards of, what you really want to look for is it a board certification? So is it a board, like, are the applicants reviewed by a board? Is it international, right? Because if it's just the state of Montana or whatever, that could be fine, but the content may be limited and it might not be a global perspective on the content, which is important because I'll tell you what, America's not getting it right. So if we're basing everything on the American way of doing things, not cool, not good, not going to be the best education, right? On the flip side, if you have a doula who is not certified or she's claimed to be trained by, so this is the tricky wording that a lot of doulas I'm seeing on their websites, they're using this terminology saying trained by whoever. To me, that tells me, first of all, it means they're not certified. Trained by and certified are two different things, and you need to explain this to the families you're working with. And families are getting savvy to this anyway, but it's good to make sure that they understand. Trained by just means they maybe took a workshop, but they did not finish the assignments. To me, when I hear someone say trained by, if they follow that up with in process, certification in process or something like that, in process of gaining my certification, that is perfectly fine. Say trained by, that's fine, as long as you're giving a little disclaimer. But if you say trained by as if as if a workshop was all you needed to do and you're qualified, that's a problem, because it means that you probably went through a program, but you didn't have the integrity to finish it. And I don't want to be working with someone. I don't want someone at my bedside giving me support who doesn't have integrity. That's just me. So if you have someone who is, saying trained by or is says they're certified, verify it, right? And if it's not verifiable, it's a no-go. Don't do it. All right. Lastly, and I would love to hear from you guys in the comments if you think that there are things that I've missed on this list. I would love to hear what those are. So lastly, are they able to meet the criteria required at the birthing location? And really the only reason why I stuck this in here is because since COVID, most hospitals have now created a requirement for certification. Some hospitals have created a requirement for vaccination. If your doula refused to get vaccinated, and I don't blame her, by the way, body autonomy is number one. You don't have to do something you don't want to do with your body, period. However, if your doula hasn't been vaccinated and the hospital requires that she prove vaccination status in order to get in, you should know that before it comes time, right? So finding out what are the requirements at the birth location of your choice and making sure that your doula can meet those requirements, right? Okay, so that is how you identify a professional doula. And like I said, I would love to hear in the comments if you think I've missed anything, or if you think there's something else that's important that we should also be looking at. Or if you have questions about that, please get in touch. Otherwise, I'm going to call it a day, and I hope you have a great one. Bye.